Let's move to our next guy here, which is Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. I'll start on him, Charles, because I'm a big fan of Emeka Egbuka. I actually think he is, to me, in the same tier of prospect as McMillan. Now, McMillan is a true X, and Emeka is just like an ideal power slot. But I love this type of receiver. Now, if I'm comparing him kind of to JSN, because I think that's an easy comparison because he's Ohio State, he's a slot receiver. I think JSN was a flashier player because he was a better man coverage beater than Egbuka is, but Egbuka's like the superior dirty work guy to me. Great hands. He's an awesome zone beater. I think people get hung up on the upside of this type of receiver, which is hilarious because I think his reception perception data compares so similarly to Amon-Ra St. Brown's early career NFL data. And who's whining about the upside of Amon-Ra St. Brown when he, is one of the most productive receivers in the league? He's one of the highest paid receivers in the league. Again, I know that certain offenses are going to maximize that type of receiver more than others. And so obviously from a fantasy perspective, it really is going to matter where he lands. If we're talking about like, what's the dynasty upside for a player like this, who isn't a vertical threat, needs to play inside. But I really like his skills translating to that role. So Charles, this is just one of the things when we're scouting for all 32 teams, hypothetically, it's harder to pinpoint like where a guy like this, if he fits for every team, but if he lands in the right spot, I think he could be a great number 2 receiver and like a guy that is, again, incredibly productive, similar to like a St. Brown. But I don't think we've talked about Egbuka at all. Where are you with him?
Oh, I've loved watching him for like 3 years now. I honestly thought that he was gonna. I thought there's a chance he was gonna come out last year with Marvin. But I think he got banged up, didn't probably have the season he wanted to, then get to come back and have just the absolute obliteration they did of every team in the college football playoff. But he's just like a classic slot receiver. And I thought that last year, or even like the past 2 years of Egbuka, have been kind of cool because I think you get to see what his ideal role is in the NFL, because the last 2 years he's had a truly dominant X receiver to play with. Last year or 2 years ago, Marvin Harrison Jr. This year, I mean, all-world Jeremiah Smith, who should be allowed to go to the NFL because he's 18 and you can join the Army. Yeah. So why not? Look at that guy, man. Like, that guy should be able to play in the NFL. But going back to Egbuka, like he's just a really clean starter. He runs routes well from the slot. He blocks, like you hear him talk. He's just a high effort, high character guy. Like I would just be kind of surprised if this guy ended up failing in the league because he's got so many good traits. I think like you go to the combine, then I think some of the sometimes these slot receivers they get typecasted as like not the fastest guys, and he's not running a 4.3 out here, but he did run in the 4.4s in workouts this offseason. So I think he's checking a lot of boxes. I've talked to some people where they're like, oh, like he's a good player, and you look at the first round, but like when you look at some of like the per game production stats, it's not maybe what you would expect from a potential like first round receiver from Ohio State. But I do think in this era of football, like we kind of have to recalibrate how we think about some of the guys on top teams, especially like Ohio State, where I mean they have put a wide receiver into the first round damn near every single year, it feels like, over what, like the past decade. So those sometimes guys, they're all
in 22, it was 2 of them.
Right. So sometimes when you start like looking at teams that are this stacked with talent, I mean, there's a finite amount of football plays in the game. There's a finite amount of time, a finite amount of touches that you can dish out. So yeah, 1,000 yards in 16 games in college last year. I can understand where people can get those ideas from, but I think his game just translates so cleanly to the NFL that I'm pretty excited for him.
Yeah, very safe prospect is always tough, but he does feel like he does feel safe, and again, it just depends on the team in terms of maximizing him from a production standpoint in the NFL. I just think about a team like Houston, that has an X receiver. They have a guy there, but they need like a true second fiddle. And I think he's a guy who could play flanker, especially if you're running him out on outbreaking routes from condensed formations. He can win in that regard. You have a guy who's obviously already played with CJ Stroud, but even just taking that out of your mind a little bit, like like an accurate player who loves to throw out routes to the far side of the field, you can get Egbuka doing that alongside a guy like Nico Collins. That's the right type of landing spot for him.